right, let's just wait a few seconds for more people to join. I see that we only have 4 people in the audience right now. Let's give it a few more seconds. If you guys want to mute yourself meanwhile, it's totally fine. I'll bring you back. Okay, I think we're gonna start in a few seconds. We're kind of waiting for people to drag their little avatar throughout the rooms and trying to find, at least me myself today was just checking the map constantly. It's like, where am I? What is this, like, treasure hunt? But I do think it's a cool concept, so maybe let's just give another minute for people to find us. Hopefully people will have those speed cards that you can just go super fast across the platform. Those are fun. Did you guys try that today? Did you have time? No?
Not the speed cards, but the platform itself, yes.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe you can try it after.
Yeah. It reminded me a bit of, sorry.
Yeah?
I was just saying, it reminded me a bit of Pokemon. Did you play Pokemon as a kid? So it was like the setup and like it brought me really back to that time.
Same. But I can tell you that the racing cars are very popular today. At some point around noon, they were no more available. And I'm like, what is everyone doing? Also, they were not parking it properly. Guys, we can do better. Like really, tomorrow I hope that everyone parks their racing car a bit better so that others can use it, okay? Thank you. Okay, we waited now a couple of minutes, so let's just get started. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion of the day. I think it's the first. My name is Carolina, and I am a UX researcher and tech public speaking coach at Speech Nova. Today, I will be moderating this session, but it's not as formal as I make it seem. We're just here to discuss if AI does really help saving time with research or not. And that's what we will find out. To answer these questions, we have here today our amazing panelists, Alex, Anna, and Laura. Let me introduce them very briefly, okay? So Alex Knoll, is the co-founder of Condense. Condense is a software tool for analysis and building repository. And they're also sponsoring this event, so thank you very much. Anna Knowles, they have a very similar surname, is our research expert who had consulted with public sector and finance, and is passionate about researchers finding their own style of research, which is super cool. And finally, Laura. Laura Baker is the managing director of Fearless. She has been working in the digital space for 10 years, focusing on UX before diving into service designer. So thank you so much, guys, for coming. I'm going to give you a bit of an intro about this topic here. Now, we are living through a pivotal moment in UX research. Every month, AI tools are created and even existing products are more AI to their softwares. And all of this at a pace that we have never seen before. What felt like science fiction a couple of years ago is now reality of most researchers every day. Okay. And that is what makes this topic so important in this moment, per se. Traditional research would take weeks, if not months, to deliver insights, right? Remember those times? But with AI now, we see this happening in a fraction of time. That's not just a step forward, that's a massive shift. That's absolutely transformational. But here's the big question. Are we truly saving time, or are we just moving the bottlenecks around? Or even more importantly, are we sacrificing quality for speed? Well, we're going to have some questions about it today. So, dear panel, now is your time. Let's start from the top, okay? How often do you use AI? What type of AI do you use? Are you using it like every day? Why are you using it? Let's start debating a little bit about this. So maybe we can start by Alex. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. I think my AI use is pretty boring, probably, and not what you would expect from a tech company founder, at least not what social media is proposing. So I use Gemini like 3 or 4 times a day I think it's really helpful for like more advanced searches, especially through longer documents, legal documents, contractual documents, or the like, and then just improving wording, improving emails, these kind of things. So this is my day-to-day use, not special. I would expect this to be like in line with the average user probably.
Who wants to go next? What do you think?
Yeah, I can jump in. I've got a very similar sort of use and boring use cases on contracts and all sorts of fun things that I mean, I've played around with a few tools just alongside some of the team on project work probably over the last few months, but if I think about it personally, probably the thing that I use the most is just that little overview that comes up at the top of Google. That's the most useful thing right now. I'm still a Google user, but then occasionally would use things like ChatGPT for more specific kind of searches, and that Google is just like too general for. For example, if I try and give you a use case, I think last week I had to work out some pro rata numbers for a couple of contracts, and so I used it to do that. So yeah, super boring.
I feel really different now. No, I use it all the time. I say it's ChatGPT. I describe it as the colleague I didn't know I needed. It's sickeningly over positive, which I love. It thinks everything's a good idea, and it is. But I think it's really good at asking all the questions I just don't have the time or brain power to do. Why is it helpful for me? I'm a consultant, so I tend to work in, I guess, departments alone. I'm alone a lot of the time, and the dog's not great to bounce the ideas off, and she's great as mental health support, but not to help with research. So I found ChatGPT, even though I was definitely like you, I did use it in quite boring ways, and maybe I am. I help it to de-risk work before it even goes out the door, so I give it different characters. Some it's better at than others, not going to lie, but it's really good at being a stakeholder. So I don't have things go out in the world like jargon loaded documents. I swear a lot, so there's a risk of either jargon or swearing falling out of my mouth constantly. So ChatGPT is really good at de-risking because it is like a devolved 5-year-old on sugar, and it does just ask everything. What it's not great at is relevancy, and that's where you kind of come in as a person. I don't really use cool tools. I've tried some of them. They scare me still a little, and I think it's really interesting that we do see lots of tools on the market. I think MIT released a paper yesterday that said 95% of tools organizations are using are failing currently because we just haven't quite figured out how and when to use them. And I think that's a really interesting kind of conversation for us to kind of look at is when are we using them and why we're using them, and is it even good in the first place? Should I just have a real colleague is probably the bigger question there. Yes, always yes.
Always yes. I actually have a little bit of follow-up question here because Laura mentioned that you use the AI part of Google, when doing a search for most cases, and only then if you need to go to ChatGPT. Is that right? Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I'll go to one or the other because I know relatively whether Google's going to give me a deep enough answer or whether I'm going to need to go somewhere else. But yes, particularly my default is still Google most of the time for things.
Okay. How about you guys? Do you try Google even, or you jump just straight to, any
I'm a
ChatGPT at present?
ChatGPT girl. Like, move over Google. There's a new boy in town. Yes. Even though I do, so if I'm looking for something really specific, I tend to use Google because I can cap what terms I'm looking for. Again, ChatGPT is really good at finding lots of things, but I also find it likes to lie to me quite a lot, and it still hallucinates a lot. So it's not particularly good if I'm looking for something very specific. Google still can beat that because it's really good at search terms, whereas what ChatGPT is doing is trying to predict what I want, and sometimes I don't want it to predict, I just want it to bring me a fact back, and that's where Google is still head and shoulders above what ChatGPT can do.
Alex, any thoughts?
I use both. Google more for like quick high-level searches, definitions, these kind of things.
Wait, is
And
that
then
your
for
go-to?
sorry.
Is that your go-to? Would you go to Google first and then, oh, try something else?
I think my brain right now has this sort of intuition about where to go, and I know that for like more complex and deeper topics, I usually tend to go to Gemini in my case and do more thorough search there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Another question. What is one research task where AI has genuinely saved significant time and one where it hasn't really lived up to the hype? Maybe we can start with you, Hannah, because I think that when it comes to research, you really do it every day. So whatever you
Yeah,
have to say.
yeah, I think it's really good. So something I use it a lot for daily, I build frameworks. I am a process nerd, unfortunately, and I love a good framework. But I work in public sector, so I guess one of the things that's really good for me is the way I work, especially in the UK, it's really documented. It's wild out there and known. So there's a lot of information that it can play off to add these constraints in. So I write frameworks of go find me X on these websites. A really good example is if you work in government, we have specific ways of doing design journeys. It's really good at finding those on websites. It's very good at its specific task. Things where it's not so particularly great at are pulling quotes from things. If you put a transcript in and you get it to ask and find a quote, I would bet my house that it will pull a quote that it's embellished in some way, shape, or form. It just can't do it. It physically can't pull quotes for us. And I think actually there are other tools out there which are so much better for things like analysis and keeping your transcripts in. ChatGPT is not the answer for that. It's great for those sorts of repetitive tasks that I don't want to do. But those elements where I actually do think you need a human involved, which is finding quotes, it's not so great at that. And other things it can't pick up are sarcasm. If you live in the northeast of England, you can guarantee 1 in 4 sentences is sarcastic. And it's like, look at this great quote. And you're like, oh, wrong context. That's not a good quote. So those sorts of things it really does struggle with. But I do love building frameworks to see how far I can test it to pull in data for me. That's what I tend to use it for. The bits I don't want to do is what I use AI for, but it's good at that, repetitive tasks.
Well, that's what it's for. Alex, do you want to elaborate on this?
Yes, I think my role is a bit different. I don't do a lot of proactive research in my day to day. I work with with our marketing team, sales. I work on pricing things, but it's tremendously useful. I mean, at Connens we use Connens ourselves, and we collect all of the conversations that we have with our customers and users, and we collect so much valuable data from demos, from customer calls, from the feedback that we're getting. And AI is just super helpful in, first of all, doing a detailed summary of, for example, our of the sales demos that we do, and helping me to keep understanding what our customers are talking about, or potential customers are talking about. And by the way, Hannah, I feel like at Connens, getting the sources and getting the evidence really works well. I know our product team worked a lot on this, so maybe I can invite you to try Connens at some point.
There you go.
Because I know it is super important. It is a key thing to have the evidence and the sources linked, being able to check, hey, was this really what the person said? So I usually use AI to ask questions against the data, against the raw data, be like, hey, what was the main themes? What in the last demos? What did people talk about? What features are they most interested in? These kind of things, and it really helps me to stay up to speed in a short amount of time. I spend like 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes a week, and it is so tremendously helpful. So bit of a broader perspective or different angle, but I think this is a very cool use case that has been opening up here.
Cool. Laura, have an opinion?
Yeah, I guess if I could think of potentially a different kind of use case to give, I think I speak to it from some of the things that the team's been doing recently on a project. We're working in sort of a new, pretty high complex domain, and so ahead of kind of both kind of stakeholder and also market expert conversations, the team basically used it to sort of raise our kind of collective understanding around the domain and the workflows and the processes and the possible challenges, so that we were kind of going into conversations with a slightly higher kind of foundational level. So of course never a replacement for the conversations themselves, but very useful to kind of quickly level up the foundations of understanding, and therefore have slightly more productive conversations than we might have otherwise, with the key people that we were speaking to. um, I think echoing Hannah a little bit in terms of potentially, I don't know whether it's not living up to the hype or whether people would expect it to be good, but I'd say the one thing it's not very good at is actually problem framing. So it can't help you like reliably with asking the right questions. That's still very much a human skill and something we need that human in the loop for, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. Before I move on to the next question, I just wanted to address our audience. Hi. If you relate to these questions and if you want to drop your opinion, if you want to share some experience you had in the past or you're having currently, please feel free to leave it, in the chat. We will love to read it later. And also, maybe we can even talk a little bit about that at the end. By the way, I didn't mention, but we're going to have a 5-minute Q&A at the end, guys. So if you have some questions that you want to do and leave in a chat, please do it. We have also a chat moderator that will take notes and bring it so we can debate it at the end. Next question now. How do you balance the AI efficiency with research rigor and critical thinking? It's a bit of a hot topic, isn't it? You can take a little bit of time to think if you want, but if you have like a quick fire answer, just give it to us.
For me, this is always something that we've dealt with in research. I don't think AI is introduced in a new problem. I think it's still an old problem that we've always dealt with. I still have product teams breathing down my neck for a report or insight, and I'm like, it happened 10 minutes ago. Like, please simmer down. And I think actually what it is for me is AI's probably become like a little bit of a power up tool, a bit like how we've been discussing. We can use it for certain things, but my process in general, I say, is very Jekyll and Hyde. I am either on paper, being very old school, drawing pictures, the classic researcher board, and everyone's seen the meme where they're stood around and it looks like a crime scene board. We still do that. I still love that, and I still love doing things like that. But what AI kind of helps me do is bridge the gap of things I don't want to learn. I don't want to learn the intricacies of every method. Neither do I have brain space for that. So I think where AI is being really helpful for me, especially, it's really interesting that Laura comes from a service design background, because I lean onto those skills quite a lot, but it doesn't mean I'm an expert in them, nor is AI for that matter. I will make that very clear. But what I think it's really good is picking up some of those elements that maybe I wouldn't have had the confidence to try myself, or maybe I don't have quite the knowledge or understanding to go out and do things. But I think especially now, as we have even more access to data, I think taking it offline and kind of coming back to those processes of giving some breathing space for critical thinking has been really important for me. I think what it's let me do is give me breathing space of thinking about what methods I want to use, how do I want to use it, and how does AI fit into this. So I think that's always been the problem of it's choosing the right tool in the first place, and that fundamentally comes back down to being a human. AI is just now one of those tools, and it's deciding, should I use that now or should I use it later? So I don't think it's a new problem, but I think it's definitely introduced a new layer of thinking that we maybe quite haven't thought about. But that's my take.
Yeah, I agree with it. Sort of not necessarily that balance not being a new problem. And I guess my thing, and I don't want to be sort of derogatory here, but I would say like in the same way that you used to, we'd always treat like a junior researcher, right? That's just how you like think about AI as well. Like it's great for the first pass, it's great for some of the heavy lifting, and as you would a junior with the right kind of surroundings, with the right amount of time, the assumption is that a model will learn and it will get better in the same way that a junior would. But you're never going to put that junior's work, or I would hope not, like copy and paste straight in front of the exec team without looking over it first, adding your own expertise and context to it. And that's kind of how I think about it with AI as well.
Yeah, to add to that, I agree. I think the rigor still needs to come from humans. I think we all had these situations where we used AI and it produced something, and on the first sight it looks great. It's like innovative and so polished, and then you read it again and you're like, there's maybe a few things that are not so right. And then you read it again, you're like, what is this? Like, it's just a total mess. I personally went through that process dozens of times, and I think it's the same case with the way we apply AI, I think my view of that is that it's really useful for the tedious tasks, for the things that would take a lot of time, going through hundreds of transcripts and finding that one quote that is somewhere and that would be perfect fit for the insight, or finding that you're just putting together. I mean, there's a range of applications. Anonymization, for example, super useful to anonymize personal data, or to get started. I've heard from many of our customers that they like to have this. They have this starting point where you have a white canvas and you have like tons of quotes. Where do I even start? And AI gives you like an initial starting point and to cluster some themes, and then you can work from there. But I think this process of checking the results, of making sure it's valid and checking the quality will not go away with the state of AI that we have currently. This is what we see, and then this is also, I think, where the efficiency gains have their limits. There's definitely efficiency gains, but they do have their limits when it comes to tasks that are too broad, too much for AI to take. Or require too much deep thinking.
Okay, great. I have a question. I see here a comment in the chat from Saranya, and she says that she uses ChatGPT to be critical of her work and find blind spots. Do you guys also do that? Do you do that often?
Yeah, that is kind of what I use it for. I think that's what I was talking about kind of at the beginning, kind of asking a set of questions, pretend you're this sort of person, tell me what I'm missing, what are the kind of things that I haven't written that I would usually write in other frameworks. So I'll upload a document and I will try and match it to things. What are other things that I've not even thought of? Again, like I said, it's really great at asking loads of questions, but where I think it kind of falls down sometimes is how relevant is that to the task I've been asked to do? And it's not great at weeding those out. So sometimes I say it helps me not go down rabbit holes, or other times she is leading me like Alice in Wonderland down them. And before I know it, I'm deep into something I shouldn't even done. And I think that's still, for me, where being the human comes in. And I think it's great at being critical. It's also great being a cheerleader, though, as we all know, and it will be a cheerleader. So I think understanding its limitation of it's going to be positive, because we will use it more if it's positive to us. We like a pat on the back as humans. So it's wanting us, it's baiting us a little bit to come in. I think understanding where its limitations lie and how realistic is that question going to be, especially if you're somebody who has a brain with multiple tabs open like I am. It can be really easy to just go with AI and go into them instead of being really drawn back and think, do you know what? I don't need to go down that path right now. It's a great question you've asked, but not today. Thank you, ChatGPT. Please hold.
Anyone wants to add on this?
I can just agree. I think I've seen those two use cases. One is as the initial starting point to help me get started, and then the other aspect that I've seen when people are a bit more critical or skeptical, they would do the work themselves and use AI as a second pair of eyes, basically, to highlight those different views or perspectives that one may have missed. So I think this is totally reasonable, and also depends a bit on personal preference and attitude towards AI.
Yeah, I guess there's no right or wrongs, right? At this point in the line. So, fundamental question now: does AI actually save time in research, or does it just shift where we spend our time? Open discussion.
I'll go. I don't mind. I'll always like.
It is.
I'm so sorry. But for me, I've definitely noticed I'm just shifting where I'm spending my time. I'll be really open and honest, but over the past 12 months, especially in research, I've probably been closer to burnout more times than I should admit than I probably have in the whole of my career. And I think what I think about now is how can I use AI to help outsource some of those activities? It's really funny. I think a couple of weeks ago I was speaking to a colleague and they're like, "Oh, you're not full time here. You seem full time." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's my cheeky little secret that we're not going to tell anyone, but it's called ChatGPT." But I think what is really important for me is a lone researcher, and I know there's probably quite a lot of lone researchers out there now. I spend a lot of my time doing admin, and I don't think businesses have ever particularly understood the admin that comes with research and design. I spend 40% of my time approximately dealing with things like templates, updating recruitment panels, making sure we don't have data that would get us a heavy fine if we're breaching GDPR. So I spend a lot doing administrative tasks. And actually something that AI can help is with some of those. It can help me with the reminders. It can help weed some of those dates out if I set a specific date. But what the problem is there is the product team don't spend their money for me to do admin. They spend it to do research, but they don't quite understand that. So even though it's not fundamentally saving me time, it's actually giving me a little bit more breathing space. And I actually find it really refreshing to be able to have a little bit of thinking time back. That's nice. Like the classic researcher spinning around on their chair. I want more of that. Like that's when I do my best thinking. So if I can use AI to alleviate some of that pressure that comes with being in a product team, I absolutely will. But is it saving time? Maybe I haven't reached those benefits, but if I worked part of a much bigger life cycle and ecosystem and more mature organizations, I absolutely think there will be those time-saving benefits. I just think it's difficult to see it as a lone researcher right now, but I can take on more work, just saying, people, you know. I'm kidding, no, don't give me work.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think you can make the case for both. Like, I don't think it removes effort, but I think it can redistribute it. So instead of spending a lot of kind of manual hours on kind of the admin, as Hannah said, or sort of like coding, transcribing interviews and all of that kind of stuff, you can now kind of redistribute your effort to kind of spending the time kind of validating the output, sense checking any kind of anomalies, the biases, managing data quality, all of that. Like that really kind of matters. And I think if you think about synthesis for an example, like traditionally, let's say you had make some numbers up, you had 5 interviews, you might spread them across a week, and then on your planning you'll say, well, then I'll need another week to do synthesis and playback. If AI can say cut the synthesis time that you might need and even anything in half, then you actually have a choice. Is do you accelerate your overall time frame and say I'll get it to you faster, or do you use that say that same time window and say, well, we'll actually interview more people and enrich the data set? So I think there's sort of trade-offs and conversations to have, and therefore the question isn't necessarily like, do we just save time? It's actually, where do we spend our energy and what really matters in the scenario. But I think going back to something that Alex said as well before, there's also an overhead that people don't think about, like training teams and people to actually use these tools properly, integrate them into workflows, building trust in those outputs. They are all things that will offset, at least in the short term, some efficiency gains, and that needs to be thought about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can report a bit from the people that we work with, and we get a lot of positive feedback for the AI features, where people say it helps their work and it speeds up their work. I mentioned things like anonymization, face blurring, these kind of things. It's a necessary step in the process. But also what I mentioned before, like finding quotes, using lateral language to ask questions against the data, not having to necessarily go through every transcript start to finish, but do it more in a effective kind of way. These kind of things. So from what I can see, there's definitely an efficiency gain. At the same time, I feel like we need to be careful and understand that AI will not be able to increase the productivity of the entire value chain of research. Even if we're talking about synthesis, we should not confuse research with just creating an output, being an answer machine, and then share that to people. I know that sometimes this is the case, and maybe for evaluative research that might also be fine, but in many cases, I think there is some value in involving the stakeholders, involving the team, doing a small workshop, because it fosters this joint understanding. It brings up these interesting discussions where you have like this outlier where this might lead to an interesting new solution, new perspective. These kind of things that make qualitative research and working with qualitative data valuable. I don't think those will be. There's lots of productivity gains of using AI there. This is still, like in many cases, a process that happens in the brains of people and as a team together, especially this aspect of alignment and understanding where we go, in which direction we go as a team. So yeah, I think it's this is sort of the downside, and I think a lot of from what you can read in social media, that there's some claims that you can create your analysis with the click of a button and get your report done. And yes, maybe you can do that, but even if AI were at the capacity to do that in a high quality way, which it isn't today, you would miss quite a bit by considering research just as this output machine. So yeah, I think it both is true. We definitely see some value gains, but we should also be. I think these value gains reinforce the conversation about what the actual value of research is, and it's not just the report with the 10 bullet points. So there's more to it, and I think this is also making it interesting, and of course also from our perspective as a tool provider, triggered lots of thoughts of how we want to support that.
It's a special point of view, that's for sure. I'm just gonna read this comment here that we have. I mean, it's a question in the chat from Martin. They ask, do you think that by hiding this necessary work, we are hiding the cost of the work? So all we've done is use AI to enable this devaluation of the effort that really exists behind research. I think this is a very interesting question. Do you have any comment on this?
I'll go. I pulled a little ooh face to read it, and I think it's a really interesting one, especially I think we struggle at times anyway to get funding as researchers. We tend to struggle to show the amount of work that kind of goes in, which then impacts us being able to have and show our return of investment. It's always a topic in conversation that always comes up. I'm really open with my processes. I don't know how open everyone else is with theirs with their team, but I will always kind of do drop-in sessions. I haven't changed the way I kind of work, even if I'm using AI and I have it open on another screen or laptop, or if people come in, I have things where I call them drop-in clinics. They're not, but I sit on camera all day and any members of my team can join just to show what I'm doing. It's a bit stalkery in some ways. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But I think it really helps them understand those processes. I totally agree. We do have a lot of hidden processes. I think those things that we were talking about before, of like templates and that kind of what I would call research ops side, tends to just be totally forgotten that this needs to be done. Do I think that it hides it from that in some ways? Yes, I want to say yes, but it really helps me as a sole researcher right now. So I will always be open and honest about where and how I'm spending that time. If I don't think I have enough time, or I don't think there's enough money in a budget, I am the sort of human who will tell them that from the outset. Not everyone has that confidence, but I think that's something that comes with just learning new tools and processes anyway as you mature. So I think, yes, there's definitely a risk that it's going to start hide those things. Do I think that's a negative thing? Not always. I think there's ways to manage that, but that's been my kind of perspective right now. Not to say it's going to change. It could change in 30 seconds when one of my other panel members chats about it.
Alex, Laura, do you want to jump on this one as well?
I mean, I think there's it's a yes and a no answer, and I think it's about, and that's where the kind of human expertise comes in order to kind of balance how much of the sausage do you really do you really need to see the whole production of it, and it also depends on the audience that you're talking to, when at what point do you need to sort of pull the curtain back? How far do you pull the curtain back as well? And there's definitely a kind of a knowledge and an an experience level to that. For example, I think it goes back to the word that we used before in terms of like rigor. And it's not about basically like showing, like, you never have developers going, look how many lines of code I wrote. Like, no one cares, right? It's about kind of the output, but actually understanding the kind of rigor and thinking that went into it. That's important. So probably like 6 months ago, we sort of accidentally walking a stakeholder through our work, and we kind of moved through a Figma file to get somewhere, and they were like, oh my god, what's that? And we were like, well, that's how we kind of went through and saw all the kind of work that they just kind of, that output that they saw, they suddenly saw how much thinking it wasn't that we just magicked something up. It was that came from that, which came from that, which came from that, and they were kind of like, okay, we understand that. So it's finding kind of the right moments to weed that in. You don't want to just chuck everything in someone's face that they don't actually care about, but knowing when and how to kind of pull that curtain back, I think, is really important.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I'm torn a bit because just showing stakeholders how much work there was in itself doesn't have any value. I agree with Laura. If there's value to it, for example, bringing in on stakeholders for a workshop or these kind of things, and I would go for it, because at the same time we should also consider that all of them are like busy and they have stuff to do. So are we adding valuable things to their day-to-day tasks? And one example that I know from one customer, I know what they do is they do lots of interviews which they record, and the researchers sort of prepare that, and they would then pull in quotes from those interviews. It's, I think, usually like 30-40 quotes or so, and then bring in their stakeholders, product managers, sometimes marketing and other people on to a whiteboard where they have all of those quotes with the exact like video clips, people talking, and they would do like a relatively short workshop to go through that, to talk about that, to exchange ideas. And I think this is work that can be valuable, because it activates this thinking among the stakeholders as well. So I feel like this might be one of the examples where I feel like, yeah, hey, there's value for everyone in there.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to leave you with the last question, but before I ask you, I want to also ask our audience to leave your final questions to our panelists in the chat, okay? After this question, we're going to move for 5 minutes of Q&A, and it'll be great to have, your questions, what you want to know. If there's anything that you'd like to ask directly to one of our panelists, also feel free to mention that. So guys, last question. Are we trading quality for speed when we use AI for research? What's your opinion? What's your take?
I just want to show the word no in the screen. That's like so rude. But no, I don't think we are. I think AI, like anything, is a tool. It has its place and purpose. The way I described it yesterday, it's a bit like a cog within a cog. So you can use it to do really small scale things. You can use it to help speed up certain elements of processes. But is it ever going to probably replace full processes? Not in the next 10 years. I can't see it replacing anything fully. Would I like an AI version of myself to do interviews? Absolutely. Like, bring it on. But there's always going to need that human to write those probably questions, see how they flow, what it's not particularly great at. It is doing those things. So do I think, is it a bad thing? Absolutely not. Like, not for me. I'm happy with our place in relationship right now.
Okay, did it take you, I'm sorry, just a follow-up question, Anna, did it take you some time to kind of adjust to this partnership with AI?
Oh yeah. We went through some phases together. No, I was really skeptical when AI first came out, and I think that's really important to add here. Like, I was a person who was like, I'm never going to move beyond making pictures of my German Shepherd into famous paintings. Like, I just don't see how I'm ever going to use it in the day to day. And I think it slowly crept in, probably through that playfulness. And then I was like, I'm just going to start asking it random questions. And I've feel like it crept into my life more and more. And then now I'm like, oh, it's really great to have there. But I think for me, I still have developed some new processes to make sure I do pick and choose when I introduce it. But I think, yeah, we've been through a lot. You would say we've had a turbulent relationship to this point, but we're pretty good now for now.
Okay.
Maybe I can go next. Yeah, I have a. I'm not so sure. I do think there's a risk of trading rigor for quality for speed. Not among people like Hannah, who is an expert, who knows her craft, who has been done this for years. But there's two things, and I'm also referencing the comments. Juniors coming into the field and people who are not researchers full time, designers, product managers, democratization of research. If we like it or not, it is happening. It's something that we're seeing more and more, especially in larger organizations. And here the question comes up, like, what do those people do? And so especially interesting from our perspective, like from a tool provider, there's lots of design decisions that we make. For example, this whole idea of, coming back to this idea of, one-click analysis, like push a button and pull and get in the raw data and give me like the final report. And then, yes, there's providers out there that do that and suggest that this is something that works. And then what they would say is, yeah, then people still need to check the results, and they need to check the results. But how much incentive is there, especially if there's time pressure, if there's deadlines coming up, and there's like a ton of other things to do, like how much incentive is there and to do, and if people may not be trained in that area. So this question triggered a lot of thinking, especially among our design team, how we do that. And we on purpose decided for a route where we wanted to use AI for smaller subtasks, where you have checks and quality checks in between. And from what we're seeing right now, this works well, but I definitely see there is some risk in some scenarios where people may choose the route of speed, maybe not even knowing that what rigor should have been applied in a certain aspect.
Yeah. Okay. Laura, do you want to also participate in this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think we make trade-offs every day, right? As humans, we make it. In projects, we make it. There's this constant, what do we even, like, most people, when you say, well, what is quality? What does it even mean? You'll get so many different answers from different people that it's actually quite a difficult thing to make, and it's actually has to be incredibly contextual to your situation, to the environment you're in, to the project that you're working on, the stakeholders that you're working with, and you're continually figuring out what that trade-off is in light of quality, which is essentially the outcome that you need. And if it's good enough, then sometimes we have to be less dogmatic and a bit more pragmatic and say, okay, it's good enough to move us from A to B. Is it perfect? Is it our like perfect design double diamond process that we're all told that we need to follow? No, but very rarely it is. So I think, especially when it comes to AI and we talk about quality and rigor, I think it's more a matter of making sure we're not doing any damage, and making sure that we've got that kind of level in there, that we're not making anything worse by doing it. If we just do something quickly and instead of going from here to here, it goes from here to here, that's fine if you've balanced the trade-off of it and you need to move quickly and you just need to get something in that might not be the perfect, but as long as you're not kind of compromising something particularly negatively, I think, yeah, it's always a risk, and the more options designers have, the better, and researchers as well.
Okay. Do you think that companies that go at a faster speed have more, how to say this? Do you think that the companies that go at a faster speed when it comes to research are the ones that maybe have a bit less experts within the team? Or do you think that, let's put this, having like maybe a dedicated research team of researchers will make you be a bit more cautious or maybe advance a bit slower, or similar to what Laura said, instead of like jumping straight here, like going a more progressive caution methodology way.
I do think that companies with dedicated researchers have a lower risk of making those mistakes. And to be clear, when we say some companies go faster, they may go faster now, but there is the risk of introducing errors which will slow you down later. So as Laura said, this is always the trade-off. And I do feel like having dedicated researchers, and maybe this is how the research role is changing also a bit more, is like they all help to avoid those downsides or those potential risks and minimize them. And maybe their roles are going more into this direction of coaching and observing those, maybe going a bit away from conducting all of the research themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, I totally agree with that. I think one of the things that I think Martin mentioned it too, just like, is it's because I'm an expert, so I sit in it from like a total research perspective, but speed is about having good people on the ground who can pick and choose what you need to do. I work with lots of organizations who want research that looks like one thing over here, but they're not even ready for the smallest of research sessions or to make those small research decisions. And I fight with product teams. I say fight lovingly, and I always win the battle. No, I'm kidding, I don't. But one of the things I deal with product teams on a day-to-day basis is they don't need to change the world. You are changing one tiny thing right now. So actually, how much rigor do you even need for that decision? And that's a really good thing that AI can't help with. But I think what AI is good at is helping us match pace for those organizations who maybe do run a little bit quicker than some of the organizations who are running a little bit slower. So I think I would love to say with specialists, it could help level the playing field and get good quality research out in places with good people on the ground doing more. But I think you're always going to need a researcher in place to help support what that looks like. So I think it's a really interesting change that I think we're going through. And I think one of the things, especially coming from public sector, girls lucky just to have a tool to do research, never mind an AI tool to help to do with research. So we move at a real different pace to maybe some other organizations. So I think it's a really interesting one, especially in public sector, of how we kind of deal with AI, not just even from us researching, but how we deal with building products of people on the other side who are using AI, because that's a new interesting battle that I face back, is how do we then bring that into our sphere and remit of, it's not Google anymore, it's, well, ChatGPT said it's right, so it's right. And you're like, oh, hun, you're not a tax lawyer, so you're not. But it's a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. I think that could be like a whole topic for another panel discussion another day. Maybe next year,
Yes.
WX. Laura, do you want to add anything on here, on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think what that's all said is good. I mean, I guess from my perspective, to offer something a little bit different as well, I think it can be less about the role itself, but actually, or the person, but actually from an organizational perspective, how is research set up and what does that look like? And I've seen organizations that have like a whole team of dedicated researchers, and they've basically been set up so badly that they've become a bottleneck, and it's given research a really bad name to the point that it's had to be completely disbanded. And then you get democratization, which is always a potentially touchy word depending on the researcher that you talk to. Some are quite happy with it, others kind of want to hold on to it a little bit tighter and have that ownership. But it's really about contextualizing to the organization and figuring out what actually makes sense, at what kind of levels do you need researchers as well, and kind of moving it from there. So I think yes, it's about the person, but it's also the kind of operational setup and how it's being leveraged and valued in an organization as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna read this last question from the audience, and then we wrap up and we finish this session. Okay, so from Anonymous, do you all think AI will continue to explain its influence on research? expand, its influence on research? And what point do we think it will plateau in terms of its influence on research activities? 60 seconds answer, each of you.
I'll go. I do think it's still going to expand where its value is. I don't think we've even touched the top of the iceberg yet of potentially how and where it can help. And I think we're just coming to that point now where we can start to think about where it can really help within it. I do think it is still going to influence our research, especially on day-to-day product teams. I don't think it's even reached that level yet. So I think when it reaches down to probably where I work, then yeah, I think that's probably a good point. We'll start to plateau. I think it's like anything. I think you'll always have a stream of early adopters and products, and then we'll get to a point where we kind of level it out. And I think that happens with any product and service that gets developed. Can I give you a time when that's going to happen? Absolutely not. I would probably be a very rich woman. Maybe we could ask ChatGPT just for the laugh to see where it thinks it's going to end up. But I think one of the things that for me, where will it plateau in terms of its influence? I couldn't tell you where that's going to end up. Am I excited for the journey I'm about to go on as a researcher? Absolutely, though. And I think it's still one of the best industries to be involved in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say the whole thing with the adoption curve as well. I think it's so difficult to know. We're definitely not, I wouldn't say we're even at the peak of it. We've got a long way to go. But that's the nature of design and research and the nature of the tech industry. We go up, we go down, we have new things. We're constantly moving and adapting, and AI is no different to any of that.
I feel like from the tech side, like looking at LLMs only, I do feel like we have reached a bit of a plateau. Like if you look at the improvements over the last month, they haven't been as big as the initial movements would have suggested, or as some companies would announce it. At the same time, I do believe that there's still a lot of potential in terms of like applying AI to certain use cases. I think in the early days, everyone would just do summarizations. It was like the first thing everyone would include in their products, was the most obvious thing. And now we're moving more and more into a phase where we're actually looking at concrete, dedicated, specific use cases in different areas, seeing how we can actually solve more sophisticated problems. And there's lots of potential in there. So I think, yeah, we still have many things to see. And then at some point, maybe we'll see another sort of technology jump in terms of from LLMs to the next thing, whatever that is. But until we have that, I think most of the value will be in the concrete, dedicated features, scoped as applications, where we still can increase productivity.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, our audience would like to thank you very much for joining, and for the questions and for the comments that you left in the chat. I think this was a very interesting conversation. Thank you, panelists, for dragging your attention span with me for almost 1 hour without spacing out. And I hope that we can, keep this conversation going. I do think that keep talking about AI and research and the whole UX space is so important to have everyone involved. So thank you for staying tuned, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for moderating, Carolina. See you soon.
Bye.
Right, thank you.